Okay, so we've transferred over to the slide now. You hopefully can see the screen here. And this manuscript, you can't see the entire thing here, but it is a horizontal page on parchment. It's probably from the 8th century, early 8th century, I would say, within about 100 years of Muhammad's death, possibly earlier than that. And it is one of the pages from the Sana'a manuscripts that were discovered between the inner and outer dome of the Sana'a Mosque in Yemen in 1972. I believe this photograph was made by either Puin or von Bothmer, and it was published as part of the UNESCO CD-ROM of Sana'a Qurans, which I believe was one of the fruits of that project. What you see happening here, and if you look where the arrow is pointing, you can see an inserted aleph in the right margin. This is not all that striking, but I want to show you two corrections on the page before I get to my third issue on the page, which is my main point. This is the final aleph of the word kafaru. They disbelieved, of Surah 974. It represents a not uncommon issue with the developing orthography or way of writing the third person plural form of verbs. All right, so the second thing I want to show you is this insertion of an Allah that's several lines down. This one has been discussed. It's one of the ones that was discussed in my book, Corrections in Early Quran Manuscripts. It was published about a year ago, among 9 others. And by the way, I have a forthcoming chapter in another book through the Inara series that is discussing more of these corrections involving Allah, 27 corrections and or other insertions of Allah or other corrections involving the word Allah altogether. So it's a more extensive discussion if you found that interesting and want to be on your lookout for more. All right, so this is the final Allah of Surah 978. Again, not all that unusual to see these kind of things. They occur elsewhere, but the main point that I'm making here is this page has been corrected in 2 spots. And so when we come to the last line of the page, this is what the main point that I want to illustrate. We notice that the scribe who first wrote the page actually left out 3 words when it was, if we're comparing it to the text that is now in common use today around the world in the Hafs text and the Cairo edition. So and that all the traditions point back toward. So so this manuscript is variant. Not only was it variant at the time of first writing, but the other interesting thing to note, and the reason I showed you the other 2 corrections on the page, is that somebody came back to this page at a later time after production and corrected it. And whoever that was, however, did not correct or did not see a need to correct the omission at this spot. So I find that very interesting. So these words stand as they were first written. So 2 people, at least, well, possibly one of them, made a mistake by omitting something, or possibly didn't. Possibly thought that that was the way that it was supposed to be written. And possibly the second one, the corrector, either made a mistake and didn't see it, or once again reviewed it and thought that that was the way that it was supposed to be written. So I find that interesting. Now let's take another look before we finish up here at the verse itself and read it there. It says, "It is the same whether or not you beg forgiveness for them. Though you ask forgiveness for them 70 times, Allah will not forgive them. That is because they disbelieved in Allah and in His messenger." That last little bit is cut off, but that's what it says. So this verse can be read sensibly, grammatically correct, with or without the sab'in maratan fa. If you read it without it, it would say, "It is the same whether or not you beg forgiveness for them. Though you ask forgiveness for them, Allah will not forgive them." So that makes sense, but it also makes sense, of course, the way that it stands today. Now, let's take a look over here at something else, which sprung to my mind when I looked at this, and I thought, well, that sounds very familiar. Those themes sound familiar. And if we look at Matthew 18:20-21, and some of you may have actually already noticed this as I read the verse, we're reminded of the time when Peter was speaking to Jesus, and the text tells us that Peter came and said to him, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him? Up to 7 times?" Jesus says to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. And so what do you notice here? It is the instance of the asking for forgiveness, or the need to forgive, and the requirement or call to do so, up to 70 times 7 in this case. But the 70 times and the idea of forgiveness both exist side by side in this very well-known account, just as they do in the Quran text as it stands today, but not as it stood at the time that this particular manuscript was first written. It lacked that idea of the 70 times. Now, the idea of 70 and the number, the motif of 70 and 7 is very important in the New Testament and in the Hebrew Bible. It's great significance. It occurs very frequently. It's not really that much so in the Quran. It does not occur that frequently in the Quran. So what are we to make of this? What happened here? Well, we don't know. But there are interesting questions in this. I hope that you can notice that and see that. Is it possible that the scribe that first thought that this was not supposed to be here actually was thought that it was not supposed to be here because there was a tradition that varied from what we have today? I don't know if that's the case or not. All we have is a single manuscript here that says it. If we ever have a second manuscript that reads the same way, then we'll be able to have a bit more clarity to the picture. But these are things to think about, and I hope it has started to provoke your thought a little bit. I will end right there and let you think some more. Please, again, like and subscribe to the channel, and leave comments below. I'll take a look at those, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.